Bien, vous avez réussi le casse du siècle, mais quelles ont été vos motivations profondes?
Je n'ai pas de motivation familiale ou idéologique qui m'oblige à vivre immobile. Et puis, j'ai toujours cherché des trésors. À 12 ans déjà, je commençais à penser à celui-là, le trésor. C'est tout.
My name is Nick. Welcome to Crime Doc. This is the story of Albert Spaggiari, photographer turned criminal mastermind who pulled off the heist of the century without firing a single shot. Spaggiari was born in 1932 in the southeast of France. As a child, he struggled to make friends, somewhat due to his name. The other kids would call him Albert Spaghetti. His father passed away when he was 3 and he never got on well with his stepdad. He had a rebellious streak from a young age, and when he was 16 he ran away from home to meet the notorious Sicilian bandit Salvatore Giuliano, as well as some other shady characters from the Italian underworld, reinforcing his appreciation of this defiant lifestyle. In 1950, at the age of 17, he enlists as a paratrooper in the Indochina War, and just 3 years later, he kicks off his criminal career. Still on deployment, he decides to hold up a brothel in Hanoi. When he gets caught, he claims the moral high ground, stating that it was unfair of the owner to exploit the women for money. But unfortunately for Spaggiari, one of the women recognizes him. It turns out he was a regular customer. In the summer of '54, he is condemned to 5 years imposed labor and banned from visiting Indochina for 20 years. In November of the same year, he leaves Indochina and goes back to France, where he is put in a prison in Marseille. He is let out in 1957 on a reduced sentence and sets up home in the south of France, where he meets the love of his life, Audi. Not that Audi, a nurse, and they marry in early 1959. Albert then finds a job working for a company in Senegal that manufactures safes. This will become relevant later on in the story. He didn't stay there very long, moving back to France in March of 1960 with his wife. He becomes a prominent member of the Organisation de l'Armée Secrète, or in English, the Secret Armed Organization, a right-wing group that wanted to prevent independence in Algeria. In 1962, he is arrested in a secret print shop which was producing leaflets for the organization. Police also find weapons and ammunitions in his home, and he goes on to spend a further 3 years in jail. This time, when Spaggiari returns home, he seems to have put his politics behind him, and he moves to Nice with his wife. They live in a country villa where they raise chickens. Professionally, he starts working as a photographer, and he sets up a studio specializing in marriage photos. He does really well, and the town of Nice even employs him to cover local events. In the studio, he is often visited by one of his neighbors, who works in the largest branch of the Société Générale Bank in Nice. They become friends, and the neighbor starts sharing detailed information about the bank with Spaggiari. I still find this hard to believe, but it turns out the bank does not have an alarm system or security cameras. He tells Spaggiari that with 1.8 meter thick walls surrounding the vault, the bank didn't think that an alarm was necessary. Oh dear. Spaggiari takes all this on board and the cogs begin to turn. At the time, he was obsessed with heist novels, notably Loophole, written by Robert Pollock, in which robbers break into a bank through the sewer system. When Spaggiari discovers that the sewers run close by the vault, his mind is already made up. He's going to rob the bank. 2 years before the heist, he tests the viability of his plan. He rents a box in the vault and puts a large alarm clock inside. It's set to go off in the middle of the night. Spaggiari waits outside the bank in the shadows for several nights in a row, listening out for any alarm triggered by the sound or vibrations of his alarm clock in the box. He hears nothing. It would appear his friend from the bank was telling the truth. Growing more confident in his plan by the day, he makes his way down to the sewers through a manhole cover. After a few visits, he is convinced that it's possible to dig a tunnel from the sewers directly to the vault. Spaggiari knows that he can't do this on his own, and he begins to get a crew together. Unfortunately, Brad Pitt and George Clooney were unavailable. Instead, he contacts 2 notorious gangsters from Marseille who also turn him down, and he ends up recruiting friends from his right-wing organization, about 15 men in total. The plan in place, the men, all earthwork professionals, head down to the sewers, carrying huge amounts of equipment along the 3 kilometers of tunnels. They bring rubber rafts, sledgehammers, chisels, blowtorches, and hundreds of meters of electric cables to provide light. They install a ventilation system, and they lay down carpet to muffle the noise as the first strike of the chisel takes place on the 7th of May 1976. It's the beginning of an 8-meter long tunnel leading directly from the sewers to the vault. All the work is done by hand to avoid detection. After 2 months of intense work, they make their way through the 8 meters of earth and arrive at the 1.8 meter thick concrete wall of the vault. They are close now. Then, a stroke of bad luck for this group of thieves. French President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing makes a surprise visit, and suddenly thousands of police flood the streets of Nice. So Spaggiari, after months of preparation, is forced to put his plan on hold. He is concerned that they would inspect the sewers along the presidential procession route and notice something was amiss. Thankfully for him and his crew, the visit passes and they can carry on with their mission. He chooses the weekend of the 17th and 18th of July to launch the final assault. As employees of the bank are closing up for the day, the men are in position at the end of their tunnel in front of the vault wall. Having worked on that wall for a few days, that night they break through the final piece, revealing the inside of Nice's most secure bank vault. And as promised, no alarm. A stolen Range Rover is waiting at the tunnel exit, ready to transport the loot, and 2 men also wait outside on lookout. It's Friday night, so Spaggiari knows they have all weekend to take as much as they can. But he doesn't want to take any risks, so they weld the vault door shut from the inside. In the vault there are thousands of locked safes. So like children in a sweet shop, they go at it with crowbars and sledgehammers. They know exactly what they're looking for: cash, gold, and jewelry. And not any old jewelry. One member of the team is a jewel expert, and he checks everything they find to see if it's of any value. In one safe, they find a box full of photos, local celebrities caught in compromising positions, which they plaster all over the walls. All weekend, they stick to the plan. They take breaks. They use a small stove to cook food, which they eat with silver cutlery found in one of the boxes. On Saturday night, Spaggiari, cool as you like, leaves his accomplices to work and goes to have dinner with a friend in Nice. He returns later, armed with wine and pâté to celebrate their achievement. Early Sunday morning, they face an unexpected complication. Above ground, rain starts to hammer it down, making its way relentlessly into the sewers where the water levels start to rise. Their exit route is now looking severely compromised, so they make the difficult decision to leave the vault at 2 a.m. on the Sunday morning. It takes them 3 hours and 3 return journeys for the men to carry 60 bags of loot from the vault to the Range Rover, just as the water levels threaten to thwart the whole mission. Before exiting the vault for the last time, they make sure to leave no prints, using fire extinguishers to spray everything they touched. They also write a note which they leave on the wall: ni arme, ni violence, sans haine. No weapons, no violence, without hatred. They would succeed in opening 371 safes, far from the total of 4,000. Less than the number they had planned, as they struggled to break into some and they were forced to leave prematurely. However, they still got away with an estimated 46 million francs worth of cash, jewels, and gold.
I love gold!
Equivalent to 30 million euros today. It was the largest heist in the history of bank robberies to that date. They split the haul and Spaggiari takes refuge at a friend's house. When employees arrive at the bank on Monday morning for work, they have no clue as to what has happened over the weekend. It's only when 2 senior bank officials attempt to open the vault that morning that they realize that something is wrong. It won't open, so they call a specialist team who take 8 hours to breach the door, which had been welded shut by the robbers. As the first employee, the smallest one in fact, shuffles through the makeshift hole they made in the door, he has the grim task of explaining what he sees. They've been robbed. As news of the theft becomes public, hundreds of panicked clients mob the bank, desperate to find out their wealth is safe. Investigators arrive and follow the route back through the wall and down the tunnel, at a loss for words. To make things worse, they have nothing to go on. No security cameras, no witnesses, no prints, and at the time, no DNA either. Even the message the thieves left on the wall was written by every member of the team, making it impossible to identify the writing. A few days after the heist, Spaggiari flees to the United States, but he is suffering from a severe lack of recognition. He wants people to know that he is the mastermind. He can't help himself. For some reason, he thinks the CIA would be interested in someone with his skill set, perhaps thinking he could break into foreign embassies on their behalf. So he goes to Washington, presenting himself as the brains behind the heist of the century. And being the genius he is, he changes his name from Albert to Bert. The CIA politely decline his offer, but they do decide to call Interpol, who inform the French police authorities. Luckily for Bert, in France they don't take this intel seriously at all. They think it's just a guy who's trying to get attention. Can you blame them really? Who would be stupid enough to admit a heist to the CIA? During this time, French police do manage to find some of his accomplices, who they'd been tracking in the run-up to the heist, thanks to a tip-off from an informant. They had been followed at the time to a villa, but decided against making arrests due to a lack of evidence. Suspicious that these guys are involved, they raid the villa and they hit the jackpot. They find weapons and boots covered in ground, the same ground they found in the sewers. And soon after, police arrest 2 members of the gang who were caught red-handed trying to negotiate the sale of gold bars in another bank.
I love gold!
Once under arrest, they don't hesitate to implicate Spaggiari in return for a lighter sentence. At the time, he's completely unaware that his pals have dobbed him in, and he's on a work trip with the mayor of Nice in Japan as an official photographer. He is arrested as soon as he walks off the plane at Nice airport. They search his home, and thanks to a metal detector, they find in the chicken pen a plethora of military-style weapons and enough explosives to take down the Eiffel Tower. Oh, and 6 million lira. At first he denies everything, but after a few hours of interrogation, he confesses all. To make him talk, the interrogator used Spaggiari's anti-communist political convictions against him. He claimed that the heist could have a disastrous impact, if unsolved, on the government and the interior minister, potentially leading to a victory for the left in the upcoming elections. Deeply concerned in the thought of his acts leading to the left taking office, he confesses to being the chief instigator. He gives up several details but refuses to name his accomplices. He chooses Jacques Perrat, a member of the National Front, as his defense lawyer. He is locked up in a prison in Nice for 5 months awaiting trial. But Spaggiari is not the kind of guy who is willing to spend the rest of his life behind bars, so he uses his time to plot his escape. He informs his lawyer of his plan, who tries to dissuade him, but he's already made up his mind. At 3 o'clock, he has a meeting with the main judge presiding over his case. He claims to have sensitive revelations concerning high-up individuals in local politics. He requests that, given the delicate nature of his information, the police officers guarding him wait outside the judge's office. The judge sees no problem and agrees. The meeting begins with the details of the heist, and Spaggiari hands over to the judge 3 pieces of paper with drawings of the sewer system. The judge takes them, places them on his desk, and starts to analyze them. Spaggiari stands up on the pretext of explaining the drawings to the judge. When the judge looks up, Spaggiari is sitting on the window ledge, ready to jump. Bear in mind the judge's office is on the 2nd floor. Before he can get there, Spaggiari launches himself out of the window. He crashes down onto the top of a car which was parked along the pavement, picks himself up and sprints toward a friend who is waiting for him on a motorbike, and they flee the scene. Spaggiari would later locate the owner of the Renault 6 whose roof he destroyed and send him a check of 5,000 francs to cover the repair costs. Very nice of him. The bike takes him to an underground parking in the centre of Nice, where he is transferred to the boot of a car and then taken to a hideout. From there, he makes his way to Paris. When the media gets hold of this, public fascination over Spaggiari reaches rock star levels. Not only has he pulled off the most audacious bank robbery in French history, he then escapes capture through the judge's window. He spends the next 12 years on the run and travels extensively under the false name Romain Clément. He spends a lot of time in Brazil and Argentina especially, where he undergoes plastic surgery to change his appearance. He even returns to France a few times to visit his mum, but no one recognizes him. In 1978, he writes a book, The Sewers of Paradise, from his hideout in Argentina. He teases the French police by sending photos to the press from his various hideouts. He sends them postcards at Christmas of himself dressed as Santa, signed "Hello from Albert" with his fingerprints attached. In October 79, his trial takes place in his absence, and he is sentenced to life in prison. He doesn't care though, because he's living the high life in South America, and he takes part in a surreal interview organised by the French magazine Paris Match. Spaggiari, sporting a disguise, discusses with Ronnie Biggs, another fugitive and infamous British robber who carried out the Great Train Robbery in 1963. Both men on the run, both arguing over who stole the most money. In '83, from another secret location, this time in Madrid, he gives another filmed interview where he recounts all the details of the heist. Despite his media appearances and his complete disregard for the police, he is never captured. His health deteriorates and he dies of cancer on a farm in Italy at the age of 57, after 12 years on the run. On his deathbed, he writes a letter in which he states, "It's the end of my journey, I'm finally free," and he signs off, "Adieu from Albert." Many of his accomplices were never identified, and only a tiny portion of the loot was ever recovered. Spaggiari was no genius, but he was bold. The plan was simple, but very well thought out, and it was a record amount at the time. Life in prison seems a bit harsh when you think of the lighter sentences handed out for murder in some of the other cases we've covered. No one was hurt, all the customers were insured, only the bank lost out. I imagine there was maybe some political pressure to make an example of him, as he held some pretty extreme fascist views. I wonder if he thought it was all worth it. Forced to live on the run, suffer plastic surgery, never see his family or friends again. I'm not so sure. In 2010, the case took an unexpected twist when a career criminal wrote a book in which he portrayed himself as the mastermind of the heist. He used a pen name, but investigators quickly concluded that the author was Jacques Cassandri, a key mafia figure in Marseille. He assumed he was safe because the crime was too old to be prosecuted, but Cassandri was charged with laundering the millions from the heist, a crime for which France has no statute of limitations. Prosecutors tried to use the book as evidence against him, but Cassandri claimed the writing was fiction and denied any role in the crime. The trial began in April 2018, but without sufficient evidence to convict him on the most serious charge of money laundering and organized crime. The judge hearing the case in Marseille convicted him on more minor charges unrelated to the 1976 bank robbery. So who was the mastermind of the heist of the century? Spaggiari or Cassandri? We may never know. What we do know is it's one hell of a story.
Tu vas dire, on pourra continuer à fumer des Havanes, boire du Dom Pérignon, avec les plus belles filles du monde, dans les plus beaux coins du monde.
That's all for this week, folks. If you enjoyed this video, you can subscribe if you like, and if you want to click the notification bell, you'll be notified every time we release a new video, which at the moment is every Wednesday. It gives us a real buzz to see more people join our pack. We make these videos for our community and we love to see it grow. Until next time, look after yourselves and don't rob any banks.